Alright, the unit essential question is, how do I engage in model knowledge of various inequalities? The one thing I want to focus on in this short lesson is what are various strategies to model knowledge of compound inequalities? Alright, let's get started. The goals here, I want to be able to solve and graph inequalities containing the word and I also want to be able to solve and graph inequalities containing the word or. And this is something we're actually going to do in class, but I want to give you a look at it. It's breaking down what is a compound inequality, the definition, and being able to describe it. The definition is two distinct inequalities joined by the word and or the word or. And again, we're going to do this in class, so just kind of so you can look at it and get a preview of it. Alright, but let's look at just a couple things. I'm going to show you just a couple problems of each type that we're going to be dealing with in class, and the way we're going to go a lot deeper into compound inequalities. But how to identify and write a compound inequality? Well, if I look at this, all real numbers that are greater than -2 and yet less than 6. Well, let's start out by saying first, I want to get my number line together. I know I'm going to say go all the way down. I'll go to, like, say, -3. Here I've got to go to at least 6. And let's extend that. Alright, so when I break this problem down, obviously the first thing I have to look at is all real numbers greater than -2. Well, I know on my -2, it doesn't include equal to -2, so I know I have to have my open circle. But the next part of that is it has to be less than 6. Again, there's no equal to, so I know my answer has to be somewhere in between -2 and 6. So essentially, it could be any of these real numbers. Alright, what I would like you to do before I do this one, just kind of read this one. All real numbers that are less than 0 or greater than or equal to 5. You can draw this number line and see what you come up with, and we will see if we match. Alright, so my first part here is I know it has to be all real numbers that are less than 0. I know, so in this case, open circle on 0, and I know it has to be everything less than that. So I know here it has to be, I'm going to shade my line all the way down. So my answer here, all real numbers that are less than 0, and I want you to pay attention to this term here, or, greater than or equal to 5. So if I look at it and I say, okay, 5, it also says equal to, close dot, but it has to be greater than. So when I look at this problem, I know in here, none of these can be my solution. From 0 all the way up to 5. But 5 on can be a solution, and also from anything up to 0. Now I want to go back to the other problem real quick, because this is the difference between and or as we get into actually solving the inequalities with it. This one, it says and, so it means you're actually going to have kind of they're going to meet common solutions. When you have or, you don't have common solutions. It's kind of like they're going opposite way. Either I'm going one way or I'm going the other. You're not going to ever combine and into one. It's going opposite when you have or. Alright, so now let's look at these. How do I evaluate compound inequalities involving and to find their solutions? Well, in this case, I think about what all do I know about this problem. Do I already have prior knowledge of being able to solve inequalities? And just like what we've been working on in class, we do. So one way I want to look at this is I need to take this inequality and I need to break it down, make it much easier to deal with. So one way I can do that is I can say, all right, here I'm going to take and I'm just going to cover up the second part of this inequality. I'm going to go all the way just to where I have to cover the inequality sign, because what this has done is this has given me just one inequality to work. Well, when I do that, I know, okay, I need to get m by itself, just like I would with any regular inequality. In order to do that, in this case, just add my 4. Negative 3 plus 4 is going to give me 1. It's going to be less than or equal to m. That's one of my solutions. Now, I'm going to come back over and do the same thing, except I'm going to go and I'm just going to cover the m there. Now we're going to cover the inequality on this side. I cover everything up to it. So that's going to give me another inequality. And I'm going to erase this, because now I can say, okay, m minus 4 is less than negative 1. Well, if I want to solve this, I know to get m by itself, I got to move the 4. Add 4. Add 4. So now I have m is less than, well, negative 1 plus 4 give me 3. I'm going to move this out of the way, because now I have two different inequalities, and now I can actually graph these on a number line. So let me draw a number line here, and I know m is 1 is less than or equal to m. Well, in this case, I don't know what m is, but what I can do is I can say, okay, just flip this whole thing around, and I'm going to say if 1 is less than or equal to 1, m, I can say m is going to be greater than or equal to 1. And this just helps me be able to graph this. And here I can say, okay, m is less than 3. Well, so I know, let me go ahead and make my number line. I'm going to start here. I'll say 0, 1. Okay, now, so m is greater than or equal to 1. Well, I know that's going to be a closed dot, because it's also says it's equal to, but also m is going to be less than 3. Well, open dot, because there is no equal to sign on this one. It's just less than. And I know my solution is going to be right there. It's going to be, this is called an AND problem, AND compound inequality. So if I want to write that, I could also say m is greater than or equal to 1, which is also less than 3. So I can, however I want to do it, m is greater than or equal to 1, which is less than 3. And when I draw my number line, I know my solutions have to fall between 1 and 3. Alright, I want to work one more with you. What I want you to do is I want you to try this one, work this one on your own. Go ahead and pause it and work this one out. Kind of see what you come up with, and then we'll see if they match. Alright, if I do the same strategy I did last time, again, I'm going to cover part of this. I'm going to cover, bring this down. Alright, I want to bring this, and I want to break it into two different inequalities. Just makes it so much easier, and I'll say the easiest way to do it is take your hand and cover, just like I'm using the revealer here. I'm going to bring it over, and I'm going to cover, I would take my hand and just cover that, the inequality sign on over, because that's the second inequality. But I do want to solve everything up to that. So now I do have this inequality. It's negative 2 is going to be less than 3y minus 4. When I solve this inequality, to get y by itself, well, I've got to add 4, add 4. Negative 2 plus 4 will give you 2, less than 3y. Well, in this case, when I divide, I'm going to have 3 and 3. So it's going to be 2/3 is going to be less than y. Alright, let's hold that thought for just a minute. Now we want to go back over and cover up the first part. Again, I only want to go to where the inequality is. Once I cover the inequality symbol, then that's as far as I need to cover up, because now I have my second inequality that I can solve. 3y minus 4 is less than 14. Let's go ahead and add the 4. That's going to leave me 3y is less than 18. Divide both sides by my 3. Y is going to be less than 6. So now let's pull this back out to where I can see both of the things I've come up with. So if I'm going to say, I'm going to start here with my 0, 1, 2. Alright, so now here I know 2/3, it's going to be somewhere right in here, and that's going to be, but before I go on, I want to make sure that I flip this around, because I know I have to say, okay, y, if 2/3 is less than y, y is going to be greater than 2/3, or else I won't know where to go from here. So I know if y is greater than 2/3, again, it's still not equal to, so open circle, but then I know also y is going to be less than 6. So I know again here, I go to my 6, open circle. If y is greater than 2/3 but less than 6, I can color in everything between. And if I write this out, so I know 2/3 is going to be less than y, which is also less than 6. So I'll say 2/3 is less than y, and y is less than 6. This is my compound inequality with and. Now what I want to do now, I want to go over to the ors. We'll work more with these in class, working through them. But how do I evaluate compound inequalities involving or to find their solutions? Well, if you notice here, it also starts out with or in the middle. So you know I have two separate inequalities. I'm going to go ahead and draw my line down here for later, my squiggly line. Alright, but I want to let's look at the two different inequalities and see how this ends up being on the number line and what it would look like as far as inequalities. So I need to get p by itself, subtract 2, subtract 2. Again, I'm treating this as two separate inequalities. So now I'll have 3p is going to be less than negative 7 minus 2, negative 9. Divide both sides by 3, and I'm going to get p is going to be less than negative 3. So I know on my number line, I start here, I know I'm going to have a negative 3. Okay, now I'm going to go to do the or. Again, I'm going to separate these two, and I'm going to put a little box or circle around this so I know this is what I was working with. Now again, if I go over to solve my other inequality, I have negative 4p plus 5, which is less than 1. Get rid of my 5. Got to get p by itself. Negative 4p is going to be less than 1 minus 5, negative 4. But now here's where you've got to be careful, because this is kind of the exception. When I divide both sides by negative 4, don't forget about your sign. So p is going to be greater than negative 4 divided by negative 4. It's going to be greater than 1. So now I have two separate inequalities, and let's just graph them with what we have. So p is less than negative 3. Well, I know open circle, and I know everything has to be less than the negative 3. And I'll put my arrow because it goes on and on and on forever. But then on the other hand, I have or p is going to be greater than 1. Well, if p is greater than 1, again, I put my open circle, and anything greater than 1 is going to be a solution. So that's the difference between and or. Let's work just one more together. What I want you to do, go ahead and work this one out and graph it on a number line and see if what you get matches mine. Go ahead and pause and work this one out. Okay, again, I'm going to work this one out with you, see if we came up with the same thing. You've got negative 2y plus 7 is less than 1, or 4y plus 3 is less than or equal to negative 5. Solve my first one. I know I get y by itself, subtract 7. I have negative 2y is going to be less than 1 minus 7, negative 6. Well, in this case, I'm going to divide by negative 2. Y, flip that sign because this is a negative. I'm dividing by that negative there. Flip the sign. Y is greater than negative 6 divided by negative 2. That's going to be a positive 3. Box around that. Then I'm going to go to my second inequality. 4y plus 3 is less than or equal to negative 5. So this, I'm just going to simply subtract 3. I have 4y is less than or equal to, well, negative 5 minus 3 is negative 8. Divide both sides by 4. Don't have to flip the sign this time because that's a positive. So y is less than or equal to, well, negative 8 divided by 4 is going to give you a negative 2. And we drew our number line. So I know I'm 0. Alright, so let's look at the first. Y is greater than 3. Open circle, because it's not equal to. And then it has to be greater than, so anything greater than is going to be a solution. Go to the other one. Y is less than or equal to negative 2. Well, I'm going to go to that negative 2. Close circle, because it says equal. And it has to be less than that. So anything past this is going to be a solution. And that is your basics as far as compound inequalities using and or. And if we just go back to our essential questions or into our goals for this this tutorial, I want to be able to solve and graph inequalities containing the word and I can solve and graph inequalities containing the word or. Your secret is to let on Monday to let me know that you've watched this. I do want you to write, compare and contrast a little bit. Just write a little short summary, and it can be using pictures. It can be however you want to do it, comparing and contrasting and inequalities versus or compound inequalities. And then I also, along with this, you can tell me the score to the Virginia Tech Duke game. That will be how I know that you watched this screencast.